Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with Nick Nova, hosted by yours truly, Nick Nova. And today I am joined by a very well known and respected DJ in the dance energy scene, spanning a career over 2 decades, pushing 3 decades now, most likely. He has played at some of the best clubs in Sydney in the 90s and the 2000s. He doesn't reside in Sydney these days that much, but that's not to say he's not a Sydney sider at heart. But he does go by the name of Kirk Nicholson. We know him better as Captain Kirk, and I'm going to bring him on screen right now. And everyone watching at home now, give him a big round of applause while you're watching on your phone. So bring him on, Captain Kirk.
Good morning. Good morning, Nick. Good morning, family. How are we all?
I'm doing okay, thank you very much. Last night I attended a live stream with Charlie Brown and Nick Skitz, which was nice to see Skitsy doing his thing for the fans, and he was overwhelmed by the love and appreciation that he received because he wasn't looking at the comments, and he was blown away. So I hope that people watching this, when they drop their comments and their thoughts and everything like that of Captain Kirk, you're going to be blown away as well.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I was on board for that last night. It was absolutely amazing. Gee, what a stream! What a set from both Charlie and from Nick. It was just amazing, man. It was awesome.
It was nice to see something given back to the fans, especially in these hard times with lockdown and clubs not being open, especially in Sydney. I know states are different, and we're not going to talk about lockdowns here, but you don't reside in Sydney these days. You're up north, is that correct?
Yeah, man, 100%. So I left Sydney 7 years ago almost. We're living on the Sunshine Coast at the moment. Beautiful, love it, great part of the world.
Anything to do over there, clubs wise? Like you still DJing nowadays, or is that just something you do on the one off?
Yeah, so at the moment, it's definitely something I do at the one-off. There's nothing really up here. There's clubs definitely down in Brisbane and stuff, but the Sunshine Coast itself, very much a live music scene up here, so a pretty big live music scene. But in the way of clubbing, yeah, next to nothing.
So safe to say, Kirk doesn't play an instrument in that case.
Kirk does not play an instrument, Mr. Nova, no.
All right, but what Kirk does do is play to a massive crowd, or at least he used to once upon a time back in the early days. So everyone knows Captain Kirk as the DCM legend, also Black Market as well, amongst a whole bunch of other clubs that you used to frequent. And you've also made mix CDs such as Kickin' Hard. You've also done the Hard Energy album from Ministry of Sound, and you also featured on the DCM Anthems CD, which was released, well, I'm going to guess maybe 10 years ago now. I think it was like that 2010 type of year, which I've got a copy of that as well, mind you. Banging tracks, but let's take it all the way back. Where does Captain Kirk's DJing story begin?
A long, long time ago when the dinosaurs were around. No, honestly, I think my DJ career kicked off probably around the 93 mark. I've been doing sort of a bit of research. The old memory's not as good as it used to be, but about 93, I think, was really when I started to sort of get some gigs, club gigs and that kind of thing. Obviously, there's a bit of a pre-story there and that, but yeah, proper club gigs and things like that started for me around the 93 mark.
So 93. So when you got into the club gigs and all that sort of things, did you dabble with like some sort of like electronic equipment at the start? Like I know most DJs would say, they did mixtapes or they played around with their parents' turntable or something to that effect. Was it something that you sort of like fell into, or is that a path you wanted to take?
It was something I fell into. So for me, basic quick backstory was I was working in a duty-free shop. We had sort of a storeroom out the back. I worked in the storeroom, and the guy that worked out the front was a guy by the name of David Lee. He was doing a bit of DJing, so he had a couple of turntables, and he would bring you mixtapes. And when he first heard those, I just thought that was the most amazing thing ever. Listening to mixtapes, it was just all my favourite tracks, all one continuous mix, which I thought was fantastic. So that's kind of the way that I fell into it. So what I did is I bought myself a couple of turntables and was basically trying to emulate what David was doing. So that's sort of where it all started.
So with those turntables, how long did it take you to actually catch on and understand the whole concept of beat matching and beat mixing and all these other things? Because when it comes to DJing these days, it can be oversimplified. It's just continuously putting tracks together, same BPM, in a layman's terms. But as you know, and I know, and many others out there, it can be very complex to very, very simple. So did you start very, very easy, or did you want to just get into the beat juggling and all that other stuff, straight off the bat?
Yeah, no, I started very easy, mate. I just wanted to get my beat matching perfect. It's something I've always been on about. So just getting all my mixes and stuff really tight. So beat matching perfect, finding places to intro and outro songs where they fit perfectly into that mix and that kind of thing. So I started with that, and mate, I'm not, you're not going to lie. The first lot of turntables that I bought, I actually bought and sold within a year because I was like, I'm no good at this. I'm giving up. That's it. I'm no good at this. It was definitely a thing that was practice makes perfect. And that came through, like I said, practicing obviously, but giving out mixtapes to people and getting their feedback and stuff on them as well.
So what sort of music did you play when you did your mixtape from the start? Obviously being the early to mid 90s, obviously the dance music was out there. Everyone was probably banging on with the Motivate sound coming out of the UK, and the other likes of like Paul Masterton, and maybe a little bit earlier until he sort of kicked on. But what was your style of music when you started to learn how to DJ? What were you playing?
Yeah, well, this is probably a little bit earlier before that. When we're talking back when I first started to learn, this is probably a little bit before that. So it was all sort of more like, Johnny Gill going to hit the floor, that kind of stuff. So Wiggle It, that kind of stuff. So it was just sort of bordering on that sort of music. And that's sort of where around there is where I practiced all my sort of mixing and things like that. And then I sort of started to fall into my sound, and that sort of came through. It came through going out, listening to people like Grant Truslove, Stevie B, and Fang back in those days, and that's where I started to pick up that sound. So for me, that's sort of the way I progressed through the music.
And when it comes to that sound, was that what was in the clubs at that time? I imagine probably the 80s funk maybe would have sort of like died down by then, and it started becoming a bit more techno-y, more dancey. But like you said, you still had like Wiggle It, and all that stuff normally came out from the UK. So was it like influenced a lot from the UK sound?
Yeah, definitely. And then as I sort of started to hit the clubs, and I'm talking about listening to Grant, Stevie, and Fang and those guys, there was a lot of Italian sort of sounds coming through. So we used to call that Italo house sort of thing. Some great sort of stuff coming back from, Keep Warm by Ginny and Lee Marrow, and going back into those days. And that's where I really started to find my feet in the sound that I loved.
When it comes to the Italo house, it's an obvious one now that I think about it. It didn't even cross my mind though. A lot of that stuff you couldn't really get in Australia at the time, if I'm not mistaken. That sort of stuff was like hard to come by because it wasn't mainstream. You couldn't just go to like your local HMV or Sanity or Brash's and buy it unless it was like some special import. I think I've had someone else tell me that they had to get a whole lot of music imported because it just wasn't available in Australia.
Yeah, 100% right. So obviously I've heard this sort of sound, and I'm like, where can I get onto this sound? Where do I get this stuff? And there was obviously Central Station Records, which was actually down in Pitt Street back in the day, not up on Oxford Street. And so we sort of to find our way around these sort of stores, and that's how I fell into, to finding this music. How I got into it is like I need to be able to find this music. So yeah, for me it was being imported from the US, UK. And obviously, some Italian places, and we go down there and start searching through bins and bins of records.
What was it like? Explain the thrill, because a lot of people watching or listening to this will not know of a time gone by when you used to physically go to a store and search for music to play, and you'd put on the turntable and listen to it, or the CD player, and say, yeah, this is something I can hear myself or see myself playing in a club, or even just to purchase yourself, because nowadays it's all online. You go on a Spotify or you go on Beatport and you listen to like a 30-second chunk. You're like, yeah, okay, this is something I'll play. Click, you add to the cart, you buy it, you download it, it's on your phone. But back then it was And even I still remember it. And this will probably lead on to your involvement with Central Station Records because you ended up working there at one point. And what was it like? Just it's a Monday or a Tuesday. The work week's begun, but the club weekend has finished for now. But some clubs still kept on going during the week. But you're in there and you're searching for the next sound, the next big hit. What was that like? Just purchasing music specifically for your sets.
Yeah, look, 100%, mate. So basically for me, obviously I've discovered Central Station Records. I started going down there. There's bins and bins and bins of vinyl. So you start going through, you take up what you want to listen to the counter. They give you a needle. You take it over, put it on the record, on the player, and just start listening through piles and piles of records. So then it was sort of that magic of discovering a tune or something I might have heard in a club or something that I like the sound of, And then from there, it's sort of as I visited each week, you get to know people working there and behind the counter, and they're kind of like, well, look, all our new records come in every Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever the particular shipment days used to come in. So then obviously you'd finish work or, during your lunch break, I was working in the city and I'd head down to the record store and they'd be like, oh, just got some new stuff in, mate. You want to have a listen to that? Like I said, same thing. So you just get to go through piles and piles of records and, mate, not all good. I can tell you that, you know what I mean? And you're finding your sound, finding your feet and you're starting to pick stuff that you like and that, you think, oh, this would probably work really well with that sound or that mixtape that I'm going to make and that kind of thing. It wasn't cheap either. You were looking at anywhere between $18 to $22 for a single. So there was a lot of money spent. And especially, at that stage where, when I was starting out, I wasn't obviously making money. It was just purely as a thing to make mixtapes with and send out to clubs and things like that. So, yeah, mate, but it was a magic time.
Was there anything that you found that you were the first person to play solely, like you found it and that was a Captain Kirk track when you played it in a club? Was there something that you discovered that was yours and yours alone, and once you played it, no one else touched it?
I don't know. Oh, gee, you're really testing the memory. Off the top of my head, I can't remember a particular track, although, like I said, there was sometimes only 2 or 3 copies of a track that would come in initially. So yeah, definitely for those first weekends where you might have picked up that track, you might have been the only one playing it, around the scene. Other DJs have picked it up, the record store will go, oh, man, we sold those 4 copies in like 10 minutes, maybe we'll want another 20 copies for next week and that kind of thing. But yeah, there was definitely times when you were playing tracks, but off the top of my head, mate, to give you an actual track that I broke or that I was the first one to play, that, I can't do that.
Too many. So you started working at Central Station, but were you DJing before it at that point, or did the club gig start coming after Central Station's gig?
So I was actually Central Station was much later in my career when I started working for Central Station. Pre there, I was working at a little place across the road called One Stop DJ, and I was there for 7 years. But the gigs were coming pre there. So first club gig would have been 93. Which we were, so there was Black Market and across the road there was a pub directly across the road, which we used to, before I got into Black Market, we used to play in, which was called Day Pub. So I would play over there with probably another DJ that some people might know very well still around the scene, Drew Coney. So we would play across a day club, and like I said, at Day Pub. We were sending in mixtapes to Day Club because obviously Day Club was the place to be. Over there you had Stevie, Grant and Fang playing over there. They were their headline DJs.
There we go. We can see a bit of a flyer from that Day Club there. Flight BM 111. Alan Anderson presents First Birthday. What year would this have been, roughly?
This would be 93. So this was my first actual ever proper club flyer, believe it or not. This is the first flyer I ever got my name. I can remember I've been sending tapes to Alan. I knew Stevie and Grant and Fang quite well at this stage. I've been sending tapes in. And one day we were standing out the front of Sugar Reef on a Tuesday night. Grant was unable to do the First Birthday, which was, it was a pretty big thing. I can't remember the exact reason. And he sort of turned to Alan and said, look, what I'd really like is instead of putting me, I can't make it, I can't be there, but instead of just replacing me with someone you choose, I'd really like to give Kirk a go. Mate, and that was it. That was my first ever flyer. They said to me, okay, well, what's your DJ name? And this is, I said, I don't have a DJ name, just Kirk Nicholson. And Stevie was standing right next to me and Alan, and he went, "No, Captain Kirk." And there it is. Name was given,
That's nice, clever.
and yeah, exactly. And the way the flyer obviously panned out: Captain Kirk, Flight Lieutenant Stevie B, and that's it, mate. So there's where the name came from.
I was about to say it just worked out perfectly because you had the first birthday flight, and then you see Captain Kirk, then you got Flight Lieutenant Stevie B and Flight Lieutenant Fang. So the Captain Kirk thing, obviously, a lot of people would probably reference that to William Shatner's, T.J. Kirk in Star Trek rather. But is that where Stevie obviously got that from, or did it just happen to be a weird coincidence that we've got a flight themed event and it just works perfectly?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously, the only famous Kirk I can think of is William Shatner, Captain Kirk, James T. So I think that's probably where it initially popped into Stevie's head. But yeah, I think it just fell into line with the flyer and all that kind of thing, and the way that Alan advertised it in the end. So yeah.
Just to go back to the whole music type of thing, that whole theme there with the other DJs, as you said, with like Stevie B and Fang and all these others, Grant Trustlove, Drew Koning, were they already established before you got into these sort of clubs? Were they already DJing there, and you were like the newbie coming into that?
Yeah, big time. So, like I said, your main sort of three DJs in that scene, and obviously the day club DJs was Grant Trustlove, Stevie B, Fang, already well established, been playing at least a couple of years in clubs pre me even rocking up. So me and Drew Koning were pretty much the newbies on the scene. Hence, like I said, we were playing across the road at the pub rather in the club. Day club. So yeah, they were well established, and a pretty tight crew. Those three, they were doing a lot of stuff together. Stevie, Grant, and Fang.
What was it like playing? Again, this is for people of your generation and to a lesser extent my generation who caught the last, I don't know, say 10 years of it. What was it like playing in venues in the city, going from hour to hour, venue to venue, no lockout laws, no restrictions, no nonsense? You're just literally playing 5 hours here, then you're playing 3 hours there, then you're playing 4 hours there, just going from venue to venue. What was that like for yourselves?
Mate, it was amazing. It was, huge weekends. I always worked through the week. I've always had a day job. And then, like I said, from Friday night onwards, usually I'd do one gig on the Friday night, maybe two, and then Saturday night it would start. And like I said, you'd start one place, move to the next place, and then on to day club for the next place, and then often a boat cruise and stuff after that in the later years. So it was long days. Remember, the nights really didn't start before 1 o'clock as well in the morning. So midnight, 1 o'clock was when the crowd. DCM actually didn't even open till 11 o'clock. At those days, so that was actually opening time. So, yeah.
Perfect segue. That was going to be the next little flyer brought up here, which was the April 1996 DCM roster, which you've kindly shared with me and the viewers and the fans. And as we can see there, Friday shift 11 to 2 and 2 to close, and the Saturday shifts was 11 to 3, 3 to close, and that's 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. And then 3 to close. So as you can see here, Luke Leal, for example, on the 4th. Good Friday, are closed. Easter Saturday, you had yourself from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Yep.
And then Stevie B from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. So these are major 8-hour DJing sets. 2 DJs for a whole night on a massive night like an Easter Saturday. And there's only 2 of you. That's literally working a day job.
Yeah, mate, 100%. So 11 till 3 on a Saturday night is the first shift. And then 3 till close. Now, 3 till close, you've got to remember, even on a normal Saturday night, would be, it could be, you could close anywhere between 9 and 10 in the morning before people moved off. So you're still looking at, a 7-hour shift down there as well. So, yeah, mate, it was just amazing. And, mate, believe it or not, the unwritten rule with the shift was never to play a song twice. So that can kind of give you an idea of how much music was coming out, how much music we would carry, but how much music was also coming out that was playable. And again, with that early Saturday shift, 11 o'clock till 3 o'clock, you weren't playing any of the bangers before 2 o'clock. You were literally there to warm the floor up, people at the bar having drinks, that kind of stuff. But you weren't playing any of the bangers because you didn't want to burn the next DJ that was coming on after you for a start. And the club wanted people drinking at the bar until, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, it's sort of like a forgotten art or a skill warming up for the next DJ. And one person who does it well when we have our boat parties and things like that is Adrian Allen. He just knows how to get a crowd warmed up. He doesn't play any major hitters that is going to disrupt the next DJ or throughout the evening. He just knows what to play, and I've been that DJ as well to open up for others as well. And it's a bit of a hard one because you're like, okay, I'm playing before this person. I know what they're going to play. I can't even play another version or remix of one of their tracks because then that throws them off. So it's like, well, what can I play then? And you still have to find that groove and hit that mark so as to not completely separate yourself, but still keep it in there. So it's not an easy skill. And these days I mean, I remember even in clubs when Show Me Love came out in 2008 or whatever it was, you'd hear it 5-6 times a night. Every DJ would play it to the point where I banned it on my radio show when I was doing Club Nation on 89.3. I said, I'm not playing Show Me Love. I just got that sick of it. So it does happen when DJs do repeat tracks, and it's quite an annoying thing when there's so much music out there. Like you said, you're receiving truckloads of vinyls week in, week out. There's music being released out there. Why the hell would you want to play the same track again? Play something no one's heard of. Establish an identity for yourself, and you sort of did that. I would imagine. What was it like for you when you played your set? Because there was no real flyers at that time, was there? It was just DCM is on or Black Market, and there are DJs playing before rosters came out. So how would the crowd know it was you DJing apart from seeing a 7-foot tall, fella behind the decks?
Yeah, look, I think obviously that's the most obvious way, but I think we all sort of had it very much an individual sound. You can go back and you can listen to Stevie, and you can listen to me, and you'll see on the roster that we played together a lot, and everyone did have an individual sound, especially when you were doing that late set, that close, and that kind of thing. So I think that was the beauty. People got to follow. Yeah, they got to follow the DJ. But it was definitely the music that DJ would play is what people would follow. And you're right, there wasn't a lot of, there was a few flyers and 3D World magazine that came out for free each week, the paper. But apart from that, it was just people knowing your sound, and then they would start to find out, where are you playing this weekend? Where are they playing, and start to follow you around. So it was a pretty amazing time.
So I remember, I've mentioned this before when I've done my own little pods and things like that. My uncle was a big DCM regular. He used to always go there, and that's where I got my love for the music, through him listening to Astro in the car, or Dinky Volume 1 or Wild FM and things like that. But I would always find these little business size cards, passes in his bedroom when I go sneak in there to listen to the music that he had, because he always had all the big CDs at the time. And there was always these little passes, and it always said DCM Admit 1. And I didn't know what that was at the time, but they were passes. Basically, you got in for free or at a discount price. And we've got one here from Pulse Goes Halloween at DCM Sydney. So this was an Admit 2. So you got 2 in for this one here. So this was a Halloween party. You were DJing, and evidently it was Jeff's 40th birthday, so happy birthday to Jeff back then. But it says 2 for 1, prizes to be won for best dress and all these sorts of things. So this is essentially how you knew you were DJing, apart from word of mouth. I mean, were poll posters around there? People are probably thinking, what the hell's a poll poster? I remember them quite well. I used to hang up quite a fair few of those. Was this really the only way you'd actually see your name on anything, or was there like posters put up inside the club or in certain one-stop DJ, Central Station, all those sorts of places?
Look, 100%. This was pretty much the main way that people would know. So not so much the Admit 2 passes like you've got there, but there would be a flyer looking exactly the same, and they'd be on piles on the floor in Central Station Records, One Stop DJ, that kind of stuff. So people would come through, pick them up. They got delivered sort of every week. DCM, I think, is a pretty unique example. I mean, the club was extremely well known and would be full every weekend. So as far as their advertising went, they didn't really need to do a lot. The particular pass you were given there is we will get given, and we could give those out to people, to come along on the night and that kind of thing. Otherwise, like I said, it was just a sort of plain flyer that might be laying on the floor of Central Station Records or One Stop DJ.
What it was like, I should say, what was it like DJing with all these other guys? Obviously, we already covered you being the new DJ in there, but was there any any friction or any sort of like, this person's taken over my territory? Not to say anything bad about others, just as a natural thing. Like when you're the established DJ, then someone new comes along, you sort of like, I better watch myself because this guy's actually pretty good. Or was there any sense like that from the other guys, or was everyone happy working together?
Look, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to anyone. Myself, Stevie, Grant, and Fang were a pretty tight team. And I think a bit later on in time, like, yeah, definitely, everyone wanted to play DCs and play the market and play that kind of thing. And, I can't blame them. But of course, there was a bit of, well, this is like our territory. We really wanted to hang on to it. You know what I mean? And I think that kind of drove us a little bit, as well to keep fairly tight as a team, and also drove us heavily on the music. We wanted to make sure that we had all those tunes, and we were the first ones to have those tunes and that kind of thing. So yeah, look, I think there definitely was a little bit of tension later on, but there's no malice in anything that happened.
Yeah, it's a bit of healthy competition, because I know when I first came along, I was like, this guy's like, he's decent, but like, who is he? And then you sort of like get shunned a little bit, and it's just like, I wonder if it was the same back then as it was like when I first got into it in the mid to late 2000s. And I think it's just a natural thing. I think competition breeds excellence, and when someone is stepping up, it also raises your game, so you have to be better than the next person, and then it becomes a bit of a healthy competition, so long as it doesn't stretch beyond something and becomes violent or malicious. But I guess the competition thing is there, and when you had a tight-knit group of DJs like the boys you just mentioned, obviously DCM is the place to be. But what about Black Market? Like, what was it like playing there? Were you playing at both clubs at the same time? Because I know DCM owners like to have their DJs exclusive to them, and other venues had their own exclusive DJs. So was it free to just play wherever you wanted to play, or did you really have to be political about it?
No, so look, the exclusivity was something that came into the scene much later, and something I probably didn't like a lot. I could understand it, but to me, I just wanted to be out playing my music, and I didn't want to be just told you can only play here and you can only play there. So like a normal Saturday night for me would very often be doing the opening at Envy, going down the road, doing the close at DCM, finishing there, going to do a shift at Black Market, and then, like I said, possibly doing a boat cruise or whatever after. Sunday evening would be EP1. So in over a weekend, I'm covering or on one night I'm covering 3 to 4 clubs at least. It wasn't, like I said, until a bit later that people started to go, well, you can only play for me, and it did cause some friction for me, particularly over times, because, like I said, to me, I understand that the clubs wanted to earn their money and but to me, like I said, it was all about the music. I just wanted to play the music. I didn't mind where I was playing. I didn't want to be told where I could play it. So that whole exclusive thing didn't ever sit easy with me at all.
Yeah, I think it sort of still happens till today. You want to keep a brand together, and I understand that. Like you said, like you get it. It's probably not the best thing, because, like I said, we just want to play music. We just want to play and just make a crowd happy and have everyone hands in the air, hopping and bopping and doing all their things. And you did it at plenty of clubs. DCM, obviously, Black Market, as you said. You've also DJed at EP1, which you've given us a nice little flyer here, so we can see we've got yourself, Cadell, who's still banging along. Shout out to Cadell. Grant Trustlove, Alex Taylor, Andrew Koning, and This was at EP1. And what year would this have been? Because EP1 was in King's Cross, so this would have been peak, Golden Mile underbelly years, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so I reckon this flight probably would have been from about 95, 96, maybe as late as that. So EP1 was it was the Sunday recovery club, or not recovery, it was the Sunday after party, essentially. So like I said, you'd have DCM, Black Market all day. You might have a break in the middle of the day, and then Sunday night everyone was off to EP1. So it was the way you were finishing off your weekend. So yeah, small club but awesome club.
I never understood how people could go partying literally all night from 11 to 7 and then kick on somewhere else. I would normally be done by 5 a.m. and think, oh, I've had enough here, I want to go. But then again, I was I was mostly working all the time, or if I wasn't working, I would be sitting there waiting for the next train so I can go back home because I never drove into the city.
Yeah.
It's just the whole concept of partying from Saturday midnight till 9, 10 a.m, going to another club and then finishing off at another club as well. Like that to me is so, it still blows my mind. And people used to do this week in, week out. Like, but I suppose that was the club culture back then. And yourself as a DJ and working as well, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, did it sort of, not did it affect you in a negative way, but did it sort of like make you think maybe I'm doing too many gigs, or was that just you just soldiered on and you did what you had to do?
Yeah, look, you live for the weekend pretty much, like I said. So don't forget, we're talking about not starting until 11 o'clock at night. So there was sleeping opportunities before going out between work on a Saturday and that kind of thing. But yeah, I just lived and breathed the music. So be able to play that for me as a DJ, being able to play that in the club, week in, week out, that music literally just drove me. And like I said, it didn't matter, Sure, I probably wasn't a late DJ on a EP1 on a Sunday night because I had work on Monday. So, I might finish my shift there by midnight and that kind of thing. But yeah, for me, the music just drove me. But look, I did see plenty of clubbers burn themselves out. I used to refer them to as dance floor friends, people that I'd see every weekend in and out for 6 months, and then wouldn't see them again for a little while. So, yeah, there's no doubt that there was, there's that level. But yeah, for me, like I said, it was really just the music that drove me to being out there every weekend. I didn't care how many shifts, how long they were. It was like, the more you give me, the more I want to do them.
And how long was it before you became sort of like the regular? Like, were you ever Captain Kirk's playing, we have to go watch, we have to go, go to whatever club you're playing at? Like, was there ever a time where you were like, not the main man to make it sound like, I can't fit my head through a door, but like, obviously when you reach a certain level of, how we would say, like popularity or respect when it comes to the music you play, was there ever a moment where you were it and everyone came just to watch you?
Look, I think for me, like I said, Black Market 93, 94, I got my first break into DCs in 94. Now, when I say my first break, I was actually only playing a Thursday night there, which is a quiet night, predominantly gay, lesbian kind of driven night. It was pretty quiet. I got the odd Friday night shift, which was awesome. But for me, big break came in. It was the New Year's of 94, 95. I was supposed to play the Friday night shift, and something happened, and whoever was playing on New Year's Eve couldn't make it. And they bumped me up to playing New Year's Eve 94, 95 at DC's. And it was just, New Year's Eve was just a massive night there. And for me, that was my big break. Once I got that and managed to sort of smash the set that I played that night, for me, once I got that and became sort of a main DJ, everything else just rolled. I was a DCM DJ, I was a Saturday night DCM DJ, and the rest of the gigs started coming in. So it was almost like that stage for me where I stopped sending out the mixtapes and all that kind of stuff. I got my break, and then the gigs started to come to me. So that was for me, that was my big break on that New Year's Eve.
So New Year's Eve, what a way to start a new year and another chapter in your career in that case, because that really got you up there. Because once you've hit that Saturday night, which was the main, obviously Saturday night DCM, that's where you wanted to play. That was the big kahuna. That was where every DJ who played at DCM wanted to be. And you got there by hook or by crook. You got there, whether it was a lucky break, whether you earned your stripes, and that's just the way it fell to you. It's history, as they say now. But once you got that Saturday position, that's when everything really started to kick off, because it's like, hey, this guy's playing Saturday main set DCM. Let's go suss it out. What's you know what I mean? Like surely there was that allure of it in there.
Yeah, look, 100%, mate. That was it. Like I said to you, I was a DCM Saturday DJ, and from there, obviously, DCM. It had the name, everyone knew about it, and then all the clubs wanted to reproduce that. You know what I mean? So let's, if we put a DCM Saturday night DJ on an art club, will everyone come to our club sort of thing. So like I said, from there for me, once I got that gig, it was sort of like I stopped doing the mixtapes and searching for work and that kind of stuff, and it was almost like the work started to come in to me, which, mate, I'm forever grateful. Like it was amazing. It was just truly an honour.
Some other clubs you played at was at Sky Garden for the family function, and we can see a flyer right here. Lovely model. I think that's Jenna Jameson, if maybe Jess McCarthy, whatever her name is. One of the others. Yeah, one of the others from the 90s. But we can see there 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., $15 with an invite. We've got Bill Wheeler, Stevie B, Johnny Gleason, and yourself. Sky Garden, again, more clubs you played at, more venues, and another one here, again, this one at the Olive. Was that the same club, just rebranded?
Yeah, exactly. Same club on William Street there, I believe. So family functions were actually dance parties put on by Bill Wheeler. So they were bigger parties. They weren't a regular club gigs. They were just the big parties that Bill Wheeler was putting on for me, or for me, for the people.
Nice one. And we've also got here, as you said, boat parties. These days, boat parties are sort of like the norm because of where, obviously with the situation with club lockdowns and things like that, boats were sort of like a little escape. But there was boat parties you played at here, one called Wet Dream, 96, 97, 17th November, 12 noon to 6. And this is from Circular Quay, so $20 in advance. Stevie B, Grand Trust Love, yourself, and then the recovery at EP1 after, I would imagine. So what were the boat parties like back in those days?
So this funny story, Wet Dreams was Stevie's party. I believe that flyer is probably from maybe the third one. I think his first one was maybe done 94, 95. Anyway, mate, believe it or not, pre-Stevie putting on a party, I'd never seen anyone do a dance party on a boat. So I would go close to saying that Stevie was probably one of the first people to put on a party like that. It was quite funny, very probably different. Like we would literally get down to the wharf with the speakers, load everything on, set everything up ourselves, travel around, and then go out. They were much smaller boats than what you guys are using nowadays, especially compared to what you use for DJs Rock the Boat and that kind of stuff. But it was just, an absolute amazing scene out there, like I said.
One thing I noticed here as well, it says strictly BYO. How the hell is that even allowed? If you're running a ticketed event, how is that allowed?
Well, mate, like I said, these were literally little ferries. They weren't boats like I said, you use nowadays with bars and stuff on them. These were literally little ferries, and it was BYO. We would load on a few cases of water and Gatorade and that kind of stuff that we would sell as soft drinks. Believe it or not, yes, it's a true story. But the alcohol was BYO. We didn't have a liquor license. We weren't allowed to sell alcohol, so it was literally BYO. So people were coming on with small eskies and that kind of thing with alcohol. So yeah, you can imagine how raucous it was out there.
So because you're on boats, obviously the seas aren't always so smooth and forgiving. Were you guys using turntables or CD players on these boats? Because I imagine if you're using turntables and there's a bump or you hit a wave, that needle is going flying.
Mate, we were using a combo of both, I think, by that stage for that particular flyer, but I think vinyl was still probably quite predominant then. So we used to hang the decks from the ceiling of the boat, so the actual decks rock like that. So as you were going over, you were running forwards, running backwards, that kind of thing. The decks had, we tried all sorts of methods to stop them jumping. Swing table, we had foam underneath, big foam pads that we used to put underneath the decks and that kind of thing. So, but mate, inevitably you were going to, at some stage, have a record jump, skip, whatever. It's just the way it was.
Good times indeed. I want to bring another flyer into this one here. This was your birthday here. Look at the hairstyle on Kirky here. That wave.
Flat top. Yeah, it was my famous flat top, mate. It was. I don't even know what birthday that was for me, but that was at the Temple. A few people may remember the Temple opposite DCM in the Exchange Hotel. So Lizard Lounge upstairs, then you had your Temple in the middle, and then they had a sort of a day bar recovery downstairs. But just one of the many clubs up and down Knoxford Street at that stage.
And that was the other thing as well. You were able to go to so many different clubs who are all playing almost the same music, albeit with their own flavor, if you will. Someone had chocolate sprinkle, someone had strawberry, someone had vanilla, but it was all essentially the same thing. But what was your favorite club that you played at? Obviously, DCM is a big one out there. Black Market. I never got to experience Black Market. Sadly, closed well before I was able to venture out into that area there. But you also had the likes of Envy. You also had Bay 33, as you said, Temple. Rogues would have opened up, I think, later on in that time, if my memory sort of serves me correct. But what was your favorite club to play at, and when did you feel the most comfortable?
Oh, look, there's no doubt that, and everyone probably expected me to say this, that DCM was my favourite club to play at. Just the vibe, the sound system, the people, the crowds was awesome. Envy, or Banter Room and Envy, they came along a little bit later, but definitely, again, great crowd to play to, really up for it, that kind of thing. So by far, I think those would have been my two favourite clubs to play at. Just, really up for it crowds, and waiting for music that, loving the music that we used to play. So there's no doubt those two for me would stand out.
Now, when it comes to playing music, probably left this a little bit late in the discussion to really venture onto, but I'm going to bring it up now because I've got the opportunity. You also got into production, so you weren't just playing other people's music, you also started making your own tracks. And if there's one track everyone knows that's got a Captain Kirk name on it, it's The Battle with Dave Austin. Dave's probably told me this story plenty of times before, but I want to ask from your point of view, what inspired that track, and why do you think it became such an absolute banger that still gets played till this day? Every time I hear, this battle is mine, it's something inside me. It's like I've got 1.21 gigawatts just coursing through my body.
Do you want the scoop? Do you want the real story on the battle, Nick Nova?
Mate, we are doing raw. Give us the details right now.
No worries. Dave used to come into One Stop DJ and would bring me in his tracks all the time. There's quite a few that he brought into me over time. And as we all know to this day, that Dave is still an awesome producer, and that sound that Dave manages to get out, all those ones for you, the battle, that kind of thing, mate, that's definitely a Dave Austin sound and just a killer bass line. But Dave brought the battle into the shop for me to listen to, pretty much done. So the premise of the battle is predominantly Dave Austin and Dave Austin's idea. The only problem that Dave had at that stage as a producer was his structure, was a little bit all over the place. So I remember he brought the battle into the shop and he said, hey, listen to this. And I'm like, mate, that bass line, that sample, that's cranking. I said, but it's all over the place. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, the structure's it's not right. It's just, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't drop in the same places. So the collaboration there came together more so Dave had the sounds, had the idea, had the samples, and I just helped him put them together and structure that track together.
So, I clicked the wrong button by accident there. So the structure came in there, and basically that's where the Dave Austin versus Captain Kirk come into it. So did you actually go into the studio and help him along, or did you just tell him where to do bits and pieces?
No, I went over to his house. Funny story there. Of course, I don't even know him as Dave Austin. So he picked me up, and we went round to his house. And I walked in the door, and his mum was there. And I said, "Oh, hello, Mrs. Austin. Nice to meet you." Well, Austin, if people don't know, is actually not Dave's surname. And a very funny moment in time for me. He sort of gave me a whack around the back of the head, and off we went back up to the studio then. So, we went to the studio and we finished structuring the track using a very old program. I remember being a program called Fast Tracker.
Yep.
So I did a program. So we went there, we did the battle, like I said, we structured the battle together. But like I said, Dave pretty much had all the sounds and ideas already. And we took it back. And like I said, at that stage, I was working at One Stop DJ. And we took it in and played it to the owner of One Stop DJ at that time, Johnny Vestex. And he was keen to put it out as a white label. So he said, look, I can send it overseas to where the guys where we buy our vinyl from. They also print vinyl as well. And we'd look at doing a run of a couple of hundred or 100. I think it also can't even remember. I think it was 100 the first run around as a white label. And so the battle was born on that white label. I've seen people posting pictures of it. I think I must have signed 100 copies. So as we got them into the store, every time someone came and bought one, they're like, "Oh, can you sign it while you're here?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'll sign the battle." So there's at least 100 copies of the battle floating around with my signature on them somewhere out there.
Nothing wrong with that. And like I said, it's a legendary track. I mean, what is it, 20 years old now, if not more? Nah, more than that. Was it 2000 it came out? 2000 and something. So, yeah, that's pushing 30 years. That's a good, 20 years now almost, you know what I mean? Like, holy crap, that's a long time. Long time. You think about all these tracks that are still played till today, and they're just timeless. But it wasn't just stuff you did with Dave Austin. Another favorite of mine is The Winner Is, which was a sample of Juan Antonio Samaranch with his announcement that the winner was Sydney for the 2000 Olympics, and just that driving bass line and everything like that. That's one of my favorite tracks. But you also actually did collaborations and ended up teaming up with another DJ who was into the energy scene, then ended up going into the happy hardcore scene by the name of DJ Weaver under the pseudonym Project Bass. So how did that come about?
Yeah, so Project Bass, I think, like I said, it was myself and Weaver to start with. So the first 4 tracks that came out under Project Bass were myself and Weaver. And then I took a bit of hiatus. I went overseas just after 2000, or the end of 2000. And Weaver did some stuff with Stevie and some other people under the name of Project Bass versus Stevie B. Myself and Weaver were quite good friends, and Weaver started working at One Stop DJ with me. And he was writing to his studio stuff. He was writing Happy Hard and stuff like that. And I said, "Look, man, I've got all these ideas bouncing around in my head. I really want to sit down and get some energy stuff out. Would you be happy to sit down?" So Project Bass was born. We did that in Weaver's studio at his house. And that stuff is born. It's funny, I listen to that stuff now and I think so thin, so little production in it, yet it worked so well, which surprises me to this day, to be honest with you.
Actually, that's what I was gonna say. When you listen back now, when you hear Just One Kiss or what was the other one? Party Rock and Jam and all these other tracks, is like there's really nothing in there. There's a kick, a clap, a little closed hi-hat, a bass line, and like a very simple little riff melody. No pads, no risers, no sub drops, none of that sort of stuff. Is just simple as, if you were to redo that track now from scratch, I reckon you can be done and dusted in under an hour. Whereas back then, how long would that have taken you guys to make?
So basically, like Time to Bump and those early ones that we did would literally take us a whole day. So I go to Weaver's house in the morning, we'd sit down, we'd do 4 or 5 hours work, trying to get sounds right and this and that, and then we'd be in such a bad headspace from listening to the same thing over and over again. Yeah. We'd go and have some lunch.
I know how that feels. Yeah, I know how that feels.
We'd go have some lunch, we'd come back, and we'd spend another 3 or 4 hours. I'd leave, so the track would be together in some sort of state, but after that, there was a load of work that Weaver would do in the background again, But you're right, like I said, I listen to it now and I just think, man, it blows me away that some of it's still even played, to be honest with you. I personally don't think it's dated as well as things that, I did with Dave, like One For Ya and things like that. I think that's, much better, but no, mate, that, minimal project-based sound still seems to get some airtime.
Hey, Party Rock and Jam still rocks, man. Let me tell you that. Charlie still plays it. I think I've played Make a Miracle. I think I still play that every now and again. And also Just One Kiss. I remember I heard Just One Kiss on a radio show years and years ago. I'm like, this is a big track. Just when the little that melody kicks in, dun 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 dun. I'm like, wow, what is this? This is so cool. And he said that bass, it just drops. It was so cool, man. And you had the Project Bass thing, and then you got into mix CDs, and mix CDs back in those days were a big thing. If you ended up having a mix CD, you were the king. Shout out to the likes of Nick Skits. He's on Skits Mix 59, looking to go to Skits Mix 60 soon, I think. Still going, and the fan base is still there. Like the stream that we did the other night just shows it. Alex K had his Kickin' Art series. Ministry of Sound had their own CDs as well with their annual and all that sort of stuff with the house music, and the Wild FM series were there. If you got picked to be a mega mixer for a Wild FM CD like Casey was many a time, and when I spoke to him, he gave me his insight. Diego V, Jimmy Z, and all these other guys. But then you were approached from Ministry of Sound, and you did an album called Hard Energy, and that was alongside Jason Midro. So I've heard about the album, but I've never actually heard it. So what was this sound based around?
So Minister Sound approached me and said that they wanted to do something in the harder style. Ministry Sound, the annual and that kind of thing was, very much house-based sort of stuff and that kind of thing. And they wanted to venture into this style of music. I was working at One Stop DJ. We were quite well known for, bringing a lot of our trance music and that kind of sound. And the premise, I think, for them was, like I said, they wanted to bring two cities together. So you had Sydney, which is myself doing the mix, so a Sydney sound on the harder style, and then you had Jason Midro doing the Melbourne sound, so probably a slight more trancey sounds on Jason Midro. So it was basically their first venture into doing hard energy or harder music for a CD series, mate. And it went on to have Nick Fish, Pee Wee Ferris, I believe, that kind of thing as well. So some pretty major players in the scene.
I was gonna say, because when you ended up on Jason, when you ended up on the Ministry of Sound album, it was like a big deal. It was like, man, like this is big. Ministry of Sound, big dance brand, international, all around the world. So what was it like putting this together? What sort of tracks did you put on this particular mix?
Mate, so this particular mix, for those that haven't heard it, like yourself, is probably slightly more on that hard energy, hard house-based sound. So look, the way it works, or the way it worked for me on a particular CD, they said to me, give us a track listing of what you want to put on it. So I gave them a track listing. I think it was 20 or 30 tracks, possible tracks that I wanted to use. They went out and did the licensing for those tracks and came back to me and said, right, you've got, I can't remember how many's on there, but let's say there's 14 tracks that you can use out of what you gave us, and there was three tracks that we want you to use that are obviously Ministry of Sound tracks. So you've got Time to Burn, I believe, was on there, which is not something that I would normally play. It's My Turn. I came in with a couple of others. So that's sort of the premise of how the CD came together. I gave them a list of tracks of what I wanted to use under what they were trying to do. Like I said, we will find it's more on a harder energy, but also that hard house sound, which is what they wanted to go for, rather than that bouncy sort of energy when they did the CD.
Yeah, we could see here the track listing. Thanks to Discogs, by the way. Damn, what a godsend Discogs is really when it comes to trying to find information on music. But yeah, we can see here Wake Up the Funk, Toka's Miracle, Paffendorf, Where Are You, Rachel Auburn, Bliss Inc., Lisa Pinup, Mr. Controller. What an absolute track that was. This Generation, what an absolute track. I still play that every now and again, mind you. But yeah, it's just big tracks here. So this was actually on a Ministry of Sound album, and funny, like the music we play today would never see the light of day on an album like this in this day and age. But back then, they were playing these tracks, and you can even see Midrose as well. He had CRW, I Feel Love, more Lisa Pinup, Dumont, Tomorrow, what a big track that is. Steve Hill still doing his thing as well. Tony DeVito, the late Tony DeVito. Like, man, the tracks they used to be playing in this day and age was mad. And what was it like to see the music that you were playing on a massive album like this?
Mate, it was obviously huge. Like I said, Ministry of Sound was a huge brand, and this was the first one in a series that they were just dabbling in the first time they'd ever done it. So it was an honour to be asked for it. And also, it was sort of my first adventure into touring, essentially, because obviously, that high energy sound was a very Sydney-based sound. Melbourne tended to be more on the trancey sound. Queensland, Skitsy and stuff, I think was doing his stuff up here, and that sound was definitely making up to there. But I got to tour that CD, so I got to go. We did Sydney, obviously. We did Melbourne down at Jason Midro's club, and I got to fly up to Queensland. We did a club in Noosa, I can't exactly remember. I think it was called the Rock, and I also got to fly to WA. So a 5-hour flight to play a gig overnight and fly back, and that was kind of my first, my first sort of touring, anything to do with that kind of thing. But it was also nice to be able to take that sound outside of Sydney, which was awesome.
Yeah, how did they actually take to the sound? Because obviously with Melbourne these days, it's become that Melbourne bounce type of sound. I don't actually know if Sydney has a sound per se, but I suppose the housey sound we have here is maybe more of a Sydney sound. But back then, what was it like? Because I would imagine that Melbourne's always been a little bit different to Sydney. So, did they take well to the music you were playing over there, or were they a bit like this is too soft for us? Like, what's this?
No, well, like I said, I think obviously people came because it was a Ministry of Sound night, that kind of thing. But the other thing, obviously, like you're supposed to do as a DJ, you've got to play to your crowd. So it's not like I was going in there and playing those same 18 tracks that were on that CD. Obviously, what I did is pick and choose. So took more of the hard house trance sound down there. So picked some of the tracks that I'd used on the CD and then played to them. So playing a slightly more trancey sound probably down there. WA, I remember rightly, for me, the hard house sound went down really well on that night. So it was just a whole set of pretty much hard house. And Queensland, like I said, because Skitsy had been up there and done that sort of sound, I could really bounce between doing a little bit of energy, hard house on that tip. So it was just playing essentially, to the crowd you had there, and taking some of what I'd used on the CD to play and just trying to weave that all in and out.
Now, I'll ask you a question now. 2006, where were you DJing still? Were you still currently DJing and where at?
2006, I was coming towards what I would probably call the end of, or my, about to take a hiatus. I come back from overseas in 2000. So we went in 2000. Just after the CD came out, actually, the Ministry of Sound. I was quite lucky. The CD came out. I decided to go backpacking around Europe with my girlfriend, now wife. We went for almost 12 months. I came back. So I was lucky because the CD kind of kept my name forefront for people. But things had definitely changed in the clubs by the time I got back. Music had changed a little bit. And obviously other DJs had come into the scene and stuff like that. So 2006, to answer your question, I was still playing. I was still playing at DCM, if I remember rightly. I think 2006 was my last year. I was also playing a lot of house gigs, believe it or not, around at that stage. So I was playing across the road at Cuba and playing a couple of the smaller venues, Fishbowl, and I can't remember what it was called. There was another small one in the Cross anyway. So I was doing a little bit of house gigs as well in 2006.
It's funny you say 2006 because, like you said, if that was the last year of your DCM career per se, it went out on a absolute high because this gem came out, DCM Anthems, mixed by Stevie B and Captain Kirk, and you did one of the CDs on this one here. I think it was a disc. Was a disc 2, I think, if I'm not mistaken correctly. Yeah, and they had DCM volumes before that. Jules had released one. I think Alex Taylor did one as well, and I think they did 3 at that point. And then since then, there was nothing. There was no DCM volumes or anything like that since. So anytime you got a DCM type of CD, it was from a DJ who made a mixtape because they DJ'd there or they recorded a live set somehow with primitive technology back then or whatever the hell it is that we used to do back then. So what was it like getting this CD done? Obviously, it was a UN Sydney, which was DCM at the time, and by Central Station Records, all the same. But what was it like working on this CD here, knowing that it was going to be a bit of a legacy thing for yourself, having been such a big part of the DCM brand and image for over a decade?
Yeah, mate, look, it was obviously awesome. Dave Freeman, I think, who was running UN Sydney at the time, really was pushing Central Station to do the CD. They finally, said they would go ahead and do all the licensing and stuff that needed to be done to put the CD out. So then we were asked to do the CD. And I think the premise when me and Stevie were asked to do it was we sat down and with as you can see by the track listing, you'll see by, mine being much of the newer sound that came into DCs and Stevie being the much older sort of sounds. We wanted to really showcase that, so DCM across the times, not what it was right there in 2006, although my CD represents that probably pretty closely or a lot more. But we also want to be able to, go through and show how the music had changed through the years. So Stevie, we did track listing, and obviously Stevie did the first one. He had been at DCM and been a resident a couple of years longer than me, I would say, maybe a couple of years younger than me. And I went through and did all the newer stuff. So load of fun, and yeah, like I said, what a way to finish off on a high. Like, having that out, you know what I mean. Again, pushing the Captain Kirk name, and keeping it in front of people in their CD, in their CD players and stuff like that. It's amazing. Anything like that you could ask to do, it's an honour.
And more music as well. I forgot we've also ventured into a dance floors once upon a time and got you alongside with him with So Much More. I remember that. I used to play that a lot. And that got done into remixes on Happy Hardcore. Then there was like a UK Scouse House version and so many others. So yeah, like you were still there or thereabouts when it comes to the production scene, because it's one thing to not know how to actually physically make something happen, how to physically make music, but just whatever's up here, it works all the same. You know what I mean? That's why I consider it like a director. I'm going to tell you what to do, and the producer's going to make it how I want him to make it. You know what I mean? So you're sort of part director and then part producer, but together it's a collaboration. You know what I mean? So it's nice to see that all that knowledge didn't go untapped, and you actually got to express yourself creatively, because like we said, some minutes ago, you've left a legacy of tracks, as poorly sounding as they may be today. Still, I don't care what anyone says. You can have Armin van Buuren critiquing it till the cows come home. You play that in front of a crowd of 300, 400, 500, even 10 people, and they'll absolutely lose their shit. So things that people can come up with is just amazing. And obviously you've done a legacy of music, mix CDs, but before we finish with the mix CDs, there was one more that you did, and that was this bad boy right here, Kickin' Hard Volume 9, which was later on in the series, mixed by Captain Kirk and Dave Austin. And I think I don't know if you came into the studio when I was doing the radio show at the time. I know Dave did. I can't remember if you did, but I'm pretty sure you signed this copy for me. So I've got the slip somewhere with your signature on it. So I'm quite happy about that.
Kicking Hard, 2009, mate. Yeah, again, an honour to be asked to do a series that Alex had made. You know what I mean? Like, Alex had just made that series from disc one. I can't even remember what his last disc was that he did. I know he's did something later on six. Yeah. But he'd actually created an amazing, amazing series, an amazing sound in that series. So it was quite an honour to be asked to do it. And I believe if you have a look at my track listing there, I tried to pay as much homage as I could to Alex by using a lot of Alex's tracks to make sure I kept that sound that Alex had made that series so famous for.
This was my introduction to Alex K, was the Kickin' Hard series. It was Kickin' Hard 4 to be exact, and that's when I first heard some big tracks on there. And then over time, you just get an appreciation for it. So I think Alex sort of, well, not to speak out of turn, I mean, everyone's got the most respect and adoration for Alex, but I think Kickin' Hard 6 would have been his last one before he went overseas to the UK, I believe, or he might have even done it in the UK. And when he was there, that's when sort of like he got put back a little bit on the shelf. And then there was a couple of others that came in between. There was a Kickin' Hard 7 and an 8, a little bit mixed, whatever. But then I think they went back to roots. Central Station did anyways, going back to actual DJs who featured and, were a part of it. Obviously, you've got the roots from Central Station Records, having worked there. Dave's got it from having music released there as well, and being a part of Kickin' Hard with his music on there. So it was nice to go back to that and sort of like bring it back, because it's such a classic, iconic energy, Sydney dance album. So, I mean, was there any ill feelings? Did you feel a little bit like, oh no, I can't do this. This is Alex's thing. Like, I don't want to step on his toes or anything like that. Obviously, Alex probably didn't own the rights. It was a whole Central Station thing. But was there any sort of like, yeah, maybe we should just shelve it and leave what it is there, or were you happy to continue the legacy on?
Mate, there was definitely no ill feelings from me. I was happy to continue the legacy on. Obviously, having another CD out there, it was an honour for me to have another CD out there. And like I said, if you look at the track listing, I tried to go back and pay as much homage to Alex and Alex's sound and what Alex would do that made the Kickin' Hard CDs what they were. To bring it back to what he created, mate, and try and lift it again. I'm sure, I never expected to get to the heights that Alex K got it to, but if I could start that process, by getting the sound right again, then that was a step in the right direction.
No, it was good. It was one of the great ones on there. And Dave Austin as well with his Renaissance. Obviously, he sort of like went out of the scene, then came back into it in that late 2000s, and his tracks were out there as well. And tracks we still play till today. I mean, some classics like Love Struck. You've also got DJ Shweed, Here We Go Again, Can't Feel My Feet, one of my all-time favorites. Seventh Son, so many big tracks. And like you said, you had the Alex K sound. Obviously, you put Truly Made It Deeply, Faith, Piece of Heaven, and so many other big tracks on there. And I think that was like the last big thing from yourself, if I'm not mistaken, when it comes to CDs or releases or music or anything like that. So to sort of close it off, where did you sort of say to yourself, okay, my regular DJing days are now done and dusted. I've time to hang the headphones up and do what I do. I've probably got married, had a family, and those sorts of things there. So where did you finally say to yourself, okay, Captain Kirk DJ is, no more?
So 2006, I think was a pretty big defining year for me. My son had just turned 1. I was still doing gigs, like I said, Jumping Across as well as DCM, and although the clubs were closing earlier than what we used to, I was doing a close shift, especially somewhere like DC's, I was still coming home at 6 and 7 in the morning, walking through the door. He's about to turn 1. He's walking and talking. My wife's like, you just go to bed. You've been up all night DJing. I'll look after him. And there's kind of some things in life that, you don't want to miss out on, mate. And for me, that was one of them. It was a massive one. I didn't want to miss and see him take his first steps and say his first words and that kind of thing. So for me, that's when I really started to wind back the DJing. And in 2009, I can't even remember how around Kicking Hard came around. I think I still would have been working around the record shops and that kind of thing. And I think I was still at Central Station Records, actually. And that's how that came about. So they came to me and said, look, we're doing Kicking Hard. That's obviously, again, you're close to Alex's sound, is it something you'd be interested in doing? But yeah, for me, I really started winding back a lot of the DJing after 2006, and it had a lot to do with family.
No, that makes sense, and I think it was a different time as well because, like you said, the clubs were different, that the hours were different, the culture started to change a little bit, and I think with that having an effect, it sort of like changes everyone's perceptions. It's like you get a little bit older, younger crowd comes in, and they want something new. They want to experience what's current for them, and the hard thing is trying to maybe cater to the no disrespect, the older clubbers and sort of like keep it in tune with the newer clubbers, and it's sort of like a hard place to be in between. Whereas if Captain Kirk's playing, what you're going to expect from him, and everyone who knows you will say like, yeah, this is Captain Kirk, whereas the new ones would be like, what is this? You know what I mean? And it's just like a natural progression. It just moves along. And look, you found a good place because you had released a couple of albums. You had music that was done out there. As we've already said, the legacy continues. People still know your name, and you still come out every now and again for the odd set here and there. I know we had you out here for the Forever Energy party. Was it last year? I think it was. Good old Dave Austin flew you down from Queensland, and we had a fantastic night that night there as well.
Yeah, that's right, mate. I mean, at the moment, I think, for some reason, and I can't tell you why, definitely at the moment, I found a lot more passion back in the music, whether it's lockdown, whether it's that. So I've been a lot more active than I have been probably in the past year. Got some new music coming out, or a new music out with Joey V on KCB's label and that kind of stuff. So, mate, I don't think it ever leaves you for good. I think you're 100% right about things changing, music, crowds, that kind of thing. I think as a whole, as a DJ career, I've always found myself very blessed because, to be honest, I was out there playing music that I just loved. And without the people that would turn up to see me week in, week out, I would have been a nobody. So I'm very sort of honoured for, those people that came out. But a lot of my DJ career, my music taste must have been very in tune with what the people wanted to hear. And as the music did change, and my music taste maybe wasn't as in tune, I think that was another big reason for me, to hang up the headphones at that stage. But no, definitely, like I said, I'm gone, but hopefully not forgotten. Like I said, I have been a lot more around, and there's new music coming. So hopefully you'll still see a little bit of Captain Kirk with a bit to come.
100% Breaking the Law with Joey V. I think that's out on Crankin. If it's not out already, it will be soon. And I've played it on some of my streams, and it's a banging track. And Joey V's another person. We went to the same school. He was a few grades below me. Again, someone who got into production at a relatively young age. So you just learn along the way. And again, nothing wrong with it at all, man. I'd encourage it. Someone with your knowledge and expertise, even though you maybe don't have the actual, shall we say, physical production skills. What you've got up here is really what's the goal there. And if someone can say do this, and someone can do it and say that's exactly what I'm talking about, well, you've got something gold there. So it's good to see you're still around, and you are very active in the live streams as well. I know in mine, on the other boys is on Facebook when they do it. Last night on Skitzies as well. So it's nice to see you're still around and interacting with the crowd. And that's another thing as well. A lot of DJs these days maybe feel that but the people maybe feel like they're unapproachable, and they're a little bit, standoffish. And I know I've been told that myself, and I'm just like, really, like I can talk for hours, I can talk underwater if you really want me to. So I'm very not cold. It's just, I might have that demeanor, but when they get to know you, it's all good and well. And you've been interacting with the fans online as well, and you can just see the love and respect they've got for you. So you very much are still in people's minds. That is a guarantee.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate that. Like I said, I do. I do love it. And like I said, I've only ever considered myself very, very lucky as a DJ, because all of us, I think, without the people, without the fans that turn up online, in clubs, every week in, week out, who are we? We're just normal people, right?
At the end of the day, really, we are just normal people. Like we're no one special. I've even got an instance now where I had a friend say, look, there's a guy who's going to be on the boat cruise, but he's so shy to say hi to you. And I've seen like, what? Me? Like, why would they be shy to say? Why would they be shy to say hi to me? It's like, oh no, it's just like he's shy, and it's like it's you and all this. I'm just like, I'm just a schmuck from Western Sydney. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not nothing special here, and I think that's what we have to remember, that the DJs, as good as they are up behind the decks, up on stage, at the end of the day, we're just regular people. So we are very much approachable. There's no there's no bad intention there at all. And you are clear evidence of that. I mean, look, you've given up an hour or so of your time to have a chat to me, talk about the old days and the production and the music and what you're up to these days as well. And I might finish it on that note there. Will we ever see a Captain Kirk DJ set in the near future? Anyway, in any capacity, do you think?
110%. You'll definitely see. I'm waiting for borders to open. We're in a bit of a crazy time at the moment. Like I said, we're up the road, but there's definitely some Captain Kirk sets coming for you guys. So, mate, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to me today. It's been an absolute pleasure, mate. It's been unreal.
No, 100% appreciate that. And is there anywhere where people can follow you music-wise? Do you have like a SoundCloud page or something, or anything where people can follow your journey or anything like that? Or is it very much a private affair, which is nothing wrong with that at all, of course?
No, not at all, mate. I've got a SoundCloud page. There's 3 mixes that I've done up there at the moment. If anyone's keen to listen to some of the old 90s stuff, want to see what we were doing back in those days, I know there's a lot of people that say, oh, my brother used to listen to you, or if you want to hear what they were listening to, by all means, go and check that out. I try and keep it updated. So I only have a free account, so there's sort of limited space for me to put up stuff. So I take things down and put stuff up quite regularly. As you know, I'm back on Facebook. So there's a Facebook page too, where promoting, the new music we've got coming up with Joey and all sorts of things, any gigs and stuff that I will have coming up. So yeah, by all means. And if anyone wants to reach out to me, go hit me up through Facebook or whatever. Go for your lives.
Just finding he's got a funky logo on Facebook, mind you, so it won't be his lovely mug. It's going to be a little DJ logo, so it is the real Captain Kirk. So remember that one there. But it's been a great hour and 10 minutes or so. I've had a blast. I'd love to keep talking forever, but I don't know if people will be willing to keep sitting here and watching and listening for the next 3 hours. But I'm sure we will catch up again and maybe discuss things in further detail. But Kirk, honestly, really do appreciate it, speaking to a legend of like yourself. And look, you may be a regular person, as we've just discussed, but you are a legend and a very well renowned and respected DJ and top fella from from 2 decades, spanning a various generations. So appreciate you giving up your time to have a chat with us.
Mate, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone that's listening. Like I said, the legendary status doesn't sit so well with me. And thank you for pointing out my age so many times and making me feel so old, how many decades I've been around. Nick Nova, I love you, brother.
It's all a part of life. And once again, if you enjoyed this show, please like, subscribe, drop your comments. If you remember anything from Captain Kirk back in the day, your favorite tracks, a favorite moment, if something funny happened, if something bad happened, if you dropped a needle or something, anything you can remember, drop it in the comments. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. I'm Nick Nova. That is Captain Kirk. And we will chat to you next time.
Thank you.